Welcome to Riot Blocktime. We're starting a new podcast to take a deep dive into issues, topics around Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining, the grid, and any questions you have, send them our way. On this first episode, we're going to take a look at some recent news events that I think caught a lot of people's attention. The first was the BlackRock ETF proposal. So I think that there's been a lot of different perspectives shared with regards to this ETF. On balance, the ETF, it seems to me that it won't necessarily accumulate lots of assets right away. It might over the long term, but I think all of the short-term interest into Bitcoin from the equities market has gone into existing vehicles like GBTC. So I see the significance of this as really just about the mainstreaming of Bitcoin as an asset, that there are professionals working at BlackRock and other financial institutions who are willing to put their careers on the line in order to back this initiative. I think indicates a level of acceptance that Bitcoin is here to stay. The underlying technology and the economics of it make enough sense for a big name like BlackRock to not necessarily endorse it, but to at least offer a product for it. And we've seen BlackRock's CEO, Larry Fink, then go on financial news TV shows and explain his view that Bitcoin is like a digital gold.
It's digitizing gold in many ways. Instead of investing in gold as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against the onerous problems of any one country, or the devaluation of your currency, whatever country you're in. Let's be clear: Bitcoin is an international asset. It's not based on any one currency. And so it can represent an asset that people can play as an alternative. I would call the foundation of BlackRock is about hope. You invest for retirement because you believe tomorrow is better than today.
So I think that by offering a product like this, now we have BlackRock's leadership kind of cheerleading Bitcoin on. And I think that we've seen that translate into the Bitcoin price appreciating over the past several months. Now, whether it gets approved or not is still an open question. People are saying that it certainly will because BlackRock often does get its ETFs approved, and that there might be other ETFs that get approved at the same time for Bitcoin. We'll see. I think that if it does not get approved, there's going to be an increasing amount of pressure on the SEC, criticizing it for its approach to how it regulates this space. The second item that has been picked up quite a bit is Binance integrating with Bitcoin's Lightning Network. So historically, Bitcoin transaction fees have been very volatile, depending on how much network congestion there is, how many people are sending transactions on the Bitcoin network. Anytime that the demand for Bitcoin transactions outpaces the supply of block space, which has a ceiling on it, then we start seeing transaction fees increase on Bitcoin. We saw that happen earlier this year, and I think it seems like that prompted Binance to take a second look at Lightning and to decide that by integrating with the Lightning Network, they would be able to maintain Bitcoin deposits and withdrawals for their clients at a low cost, and on top of that, make it instant. So I think that's a really interesting development. Obviously, I'm biased in that I helped Kraken with the integration of Lightning there. So I think that it's a great business move for Binance, and it will continue to accelerate Lightning adoption. It's kind of the cheap and instant way of sending Bitcoin around, whereas on-chain is just more expensive or slower. Third item is around the growth of Bitcoin mining outside the United States. Now, Bitcoin mining is a highly competitive industry because it is permissionless. So there's free entry. Anybody can start mining Bitcoin. The SHA-256 squared hashing algorithm is widely known. There's a big market for buying and selling mining rigs. So really all you need is access to electricity and infrastructure in order to mine Bitcoin. And electricity is found all around the world. So one trend that has been noted is that countries like Russia that have ample energy resources, and in the Middle East as well, are starting to increase their scale of Bitcoin mining. So the competitive pressure is not just within the United States or among companies and different individuals mining in their garage. It's also now between nation states, right? So different countries are trying to mine as much Bitcoin as possible, not because they want to control the Bitcoin network. I think it's amply clear to everyone involved that the Bitcoin network being decentralized is really outside of the control of any single country. The reason they're mining Bitcoin is to earn those revenues, is to bring those Bitcoin as a currency into their control so that then they can spend that money on their priorities. And so that's really where the competition is. It's about economic rivalry rather than trying to take control of the Bitcoin network or anything nefarious like that. Those are the three items that I thought we should call out today. If you have questions related to these or to other news items you want to send in, we'd be very happy to answer them. As far as Riot-related news, we've got two big items. One is that we've announced that we're going to be purchasing WhatsMiner MicroBT machines that are going to be deployed in our Corsicana facility for immersion cooling. Now, this is notable for a number of different reasons. One is that these machines are going to be manufactured in the United States. So there's a really great story here about onshoring manufacturing. And the other is that these machines are highly efficient. So, from a Bitcoin miner perspective, we want to be operating with the most efficient machines so that we have the lowest cost of production for producing Bitcoin. Now, the third is that historically, the mining rig market has been dominated by one company. And so this is also part of decentralizing Bitcoin mining manufacturing and growing the market that way. The other big Riot news item is our June update in terms of production. So really interesting phenomenon here in Texas is that the electricity price is fairly volatile. Now, there are days where we are hitting record numbers in terms of the grid's electricity production and consumption due to the summer heat. But at the same time, the electricity price can stay very low because of solar, because of wind, and then, of course, natural gas as well. Natural gas prices have come down quite a lot since their highs 18 months ago. And so that confluence of factors can mean that electricity prices are very low despite a high amount of electricity consumption. Now, on some other days and times, if there's not enough wind or if the sun is setting and so solar is decreasing, we've seen that the electricity price during those times can actually spike up. And so when that happens, there's a number of different modalities by which Riot curtails its power consumption. So the first is just that we don't want to pay those high electricity prices because that would make the Bitcoin production unprofitable. And so we would just turn off for that reason alone. Now, add on top of that, that we're working closely with the grid operator, ERCOT, and they want to be able to control when we turn off in order to optimize their management of the grid for reliability purposes. And so, for example, when the sun is setting and solar is decreasing rapidly, they sometimes have deployed what's called ECRS in order to offset the solar production decrease by a decrease in demand from Bitcoin miners and from others who are participating in the ECRS program. And that participation is actually done very competitively. So there's a competitive bidding process for different participants, including batteries, including Bitcoin miners and others, in order to participate in ECRS so that the cost for ERCOT is minimized. And so that having that be a highly competitive program is beneficial to the ratepayers ultimately on the grid. Now, the other mechanism or the other factor in terms of curtailment is that Riot has in place long-term power purchase agreements. And so this is where we've made promises with the electricity producers, right, the owners of power plants, to purchase their electricity for the coming years. And so that gives them the financial incentive and ability to continue to increase their electricity production, whether it's with renewables or with natural gas or any other kind of electricity production method. And then with that contract in place, when we do have to turn off our mining facility, then we can sell that electricity back to the grid and actually help push electricity prices down. Otherwise, the electricity prices would go higher than they do. And so this ability to balance the grid and to buy electricity prices or to buy electricity when prices are low and then to sell when electricity prices are high is actually helping reduce the volatility that we see in the grid and ultimately help stabilize from an economic perspective, in addition to stabilizing from a reliability perspective through participation in ancillary services like ECRS. So the outcome here is that when we look at our June production numbers, we had lower production of Bitcoin, but a higher amount of selling our electricity in order to earn power credits and to essentially make sure that at any given time we're maximizing the revenues for the company by looking at, do we sell electricity to the Bitcoin network or do we sell our electricity back to the grid? And that's really the advantage of having a strategy that is looking at Bitcoin mining holistically as participating on the grid. And that, it benefits the company, but it really is about Adam Smith's invisible hand, because it also benefits the entire grid as a whole in terms of stabilizing supply and demand. So that's it for updates at a high level from the company. And we'll bring in some experts as well from within Riot to discuss these different issues over the coming months. A common question I hear is, why is it that Bitcoin mining is highly interruptible? Why is it different than other electrical loads on the grid? And the reason is fundamentally because Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning that when a computer, a mining rig, is performing the functions of Bitcoin mining, which is SHA-256, it's just a hash that happens in the blink of an eye. And these machines create trillions of hashes per second. And so there's really, if you stop the machine at any given time, you're not going to interrupt a process that will take many hours to start over again. It can actually turn back on right where it was very quickly in seconds. So from the network perspective, if there is less Bitcoin mining happening, that's really not noticeable to the users unless it's really, 20% or 30% of the hash rate has gone away. That did happen in 2021 when the Chinese government banned Bitcoin mining. We saw a decrease in hash rate because they were turning off miners to move them. And the way that the users saw this was that Bitcoin transactions were getting confirmed more slowly. So instead of having a block every 10 minutes on average, perhaps, we could say there was a block every 12 minutes on average. And so on average, transactions took longer to confirm. But after 2 weeks worth of blocks, which, because if time is slowed down, that might take, 16 days or 18 days. After that period of time of lower hash rate and slower blocks, there's a mechanism called the difficulty adjustment, which will decrease the difficulty in order to calibrate this clock back to 10 minutes. And so just because the hash rate decreases for a period of time, the network can actually correct for that and avoid impacting the user experience for an extended period of time. So all that to say, with Bitcoin mining, you can have specific miners. For example, all of the miners in Texas can turn off, but because there are miners all around the world, the Bitcoin network can continue to confirm transactions and people can continue to use it as a global monetary system. So that's hugely valuable from the perspective of grid flexibility, right? That you can have this load turn off and not have a tremendous economic cost from a global perspective because there are Bitcoin miners everywhere. Now, because Bitcoin is highly interruptible, that also creates a responsibility for the miners to be working closely with their grid operator or with the perhaps they're working on a microgrid with their own power generation. They have to keep the system balanced from an electrical perspective. And so it's important to approach interruptibility and curtailment and demand response in a way that makes you a good grid citizen and does not create any kind of negative side effects. So Bitcoin has the freedom of high interruptibility, but it also has the responsibility that comes along with that. Now, before we go, I wanted to share a public service announcement with you, which is that there are lots of people impersonating Riot and other Bitcoin miners as well. And by pretending to be us and using our branding and, essentially trying to scam folks, they are trying to offer retail products. And I want to emphasize that Riot does not have any retail products per se. So we self-mine, so we own mining rigs that we generate Bitcoin with. We also do have some institutional hosting agreements with third parties, but we don't have any public-facing retail hosting agreements. So if anybody is trying to solicit you for a cloud mining type of investment with Riot, that is an impersonator. So please be diligent in avoiding those scams. And if you're in doubt, go to riotplatforms.com or go to our Twitter handle at Riot Platforms. And that's where we communicate any kind of information to the public. And we're not on Telegram or on Instagram. So please be careful. There's lots of folks out there trying to take advantage of the public with these kinds of scams. So do lots of research and be cautious about the impersonators out there. Thank you. We're going to try different formats with Blocktime. So we're going to have news roundups like this. We're going to have guest interviews, and looking forward to developing this podcast and, really just doing a deep dive on different topics. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to future episodes, and we'll keep dialing it in. Have a great week.